A millionaire reunites with his childhood sweetheart and discovers a secret she has kept for years, a revelation that could change everything between them. A story of reunion, love, and hidden truths. Get ready to be moved. Subscribe, leave your like, and comment where you are watching from. The rusty iron gate creaked as it was pushed, a sharp sound echoing through the quiet street of Brooklyn. Ryan Mitchell paused for a moment, his hand still gripping the weathered green gate, and closed his eyes. The scent of jasmine filled his nostrils, the same aroma that had permeated his teenage memories at 15, when he used to sit by that very gate next to Mia, sharing impossible dreams and brownies she made secretly from her mother. 20 years, 2 complete decades since he had left that house, that neighborhood, that city. Ryan looked at his own hands, tanned, well-groomed, with a Rolex that cost more than the house in front of him was worth. Hands that signed million-dollar contracts, that shook hands with international CEOs, that commanded a technology multinational with offices in 12 countries. But at that moment, in front of that worn wooden door with its faded blue paint, those hands trembled like those of an insecure boy. The letter was folded in the inner pocket of his Italian blazer. Common stationery paper, the kind sold in neighborhood stationery stores, with Mia's delicate cursive handwriting that he would recognize anywhere. "Ryan, I need to see you before it's too late. Please come home. Mia." Just those words, written in blue ink with no sender on the brown envelope. He had received it 3 weeks ago in his apartment in Los Angeles, forwarded by someone who knew his address. Since then, he hadn't been able to sleep properly. Ryan took a deep breath and rang the doorbell. The shrill, off-key sound, that same old doorbell that rang on Sundays when he came for lunch, made his heart race. Footsteps approached from the other side. The door opened slowly, creaking on hinges that had needed oil for years. And there she was. Mia Johnson was 37, just 6 months younger than him, but she seemed to exist in a different dimension of time. Her dark brown hair fell in natural waves to her shoulders, pinned to the side with a simple tortoiseshell clip. Her almond-shaped eyes, those same honey-colored eyes that had kept him awake in his teenage years, widened in immediate recognition. She wore faded jeans and a white cotton blouse with small embroidered flowers, and she was barefoot. Her feet were small, with discreet red nail polish. "Ryan," her voice came out as a strangled whisper. "Hi, Mia." Ryan tried to smile, but felt the corners of his lips tremble. For a moment that seemed to stretch into eternity, they simply looked at each other. Ryan observed every detail, the small wrinkles around her eyes, indicating someone who smiled often. Her fair skin, without makeup, with a few freckles scattered across her nose, her thin lips slightly chapped. There was a fragility in her smile, a hesitation in her movements that completely destabilized him. "You came," Mia finally said, and then, as if remembering social conventions, opened the door completely. "Please come in." Ryan crossed the threshold and was immediately transported back in time. The small living room remained practically identical, the beige couch, now more worn, the wooden bookshelf filled with books organized by author, the handmade rug covering the cold red ceramic floor. What had changed was the number of books. They were everywhere, piled in corners, occupying the coffee table, forming small towers next to the worn armchair. "Sorry for the mess," Mia said, following his gaze. "The bookstore is under renovation, so I brought part of the stock here." "Bookstore?" Ryan turned to face her. "I inherited it from my father when he passed away 3 years ago." Her voice faltered slightly on the word "passed." "My mother followed a year later. Heart problems. It was quick." "Mia, I didn't know. I'm so sorry." Ryan took a step toward her, instinctively wanting to hug her, but stopped when he saw her subtly retreat. "You couldn't have known. We lost touch." Mia crossed her arms over her chest, in a gesture that seemed more protective than cold. Coffee? I still drink that strong coffee you said tasted like rocket fuel. Ryan let out a genuine laugh, and that seemed to break some of the tension. Please, I need fuel after an 8-hour flight. In the small kitchen, with yellow laminate cabinets from the 80s and a 4-burner gas stove, Mia prepared the coffee in an old Italian coffee maker. Ryan sat at the light wood table, in the same spot he used to sit as a teenager, and watched her movements. There was an economy of gestures, a practical efficiency in each action, grabbing the cups, measuring the coffee, lighting the flame. They were the hands of someone used to taking care of things alone. "Do you still drink it without sugar?" she asked, not looking back. "I do." He was surprised she remembered. The silence that followed was not comfortable. It was laden with 20 years of unasked questions, of unspoken explanations, of a friendship that had been abruptly interrupted when Ryan left to try his luck in Chicago, then Miami, and finally abroad. He had promised to come back, to write, to call. In the first few months, he kept that promise. Then life happened. Opportunities, changes, a new world that completely swallowed him. Mia placed the steaming cup in front of him and sat in the opposite chair, holding her own cup with both hands, as if she needed the warmth. "Why did you call me, Mia?" Ryan asked, straightforward. "In the letter you said, before it's too late." "It's too late." "Are you sick?" "No." She shook her head, and he noticed her eyes shining. "I'm not sick, not physically at least." "Then what?" "I needed to see you, Ryan." She interrupted him, finally lifting her eyes to meet his. "I needed to see you before life keeps changing, and this moment is lost forever. Do you understand?" He didn't understand, not completely, but he nodded anyway. "I read about you," she continued, her voice firmer now. "When that article came out in Forbes about young entrepreneurs who made a fortune in Silicon Valley. Your picture was there, CEO of Tech Vision USA. You made it, Ryan. Everything you dreamed of when we were at that port, imagining what it would be like to leave here. There was something in her tone. It wasn't bitterness. It wasn't envy. It was something more complex, more melancholic. "And you?" he asked softly. "Tell me about you, Mia. These 20 years, the bookstore, your life." Mia took a long sip of her coffee, as if she needed the courage that caffeine could provide. "My life," she began, then smiled. A small, almost sad smile. "My life is simple. I don't have your fortune, your planes, your international meetings. But I have my books. I have the kids from the neighborhood who come every Tuesday and Thursday for the literature classes I teach for free. I have Mrs. Smith, the lady from apartment 302, who comes to the bookstore just to chat because she's lonely. I have Ethan, the 12-year-old boy who was repeating 5th grade and now writes poetry. I have..." She paused, biting her lower lip. "I have a life that I build page by page, like the books I sell." Ryan felt something tighten in his chest. "It sounds like a beautiful life." "It is." Mia agreed, but there was that fragility in her eyes again. "But it's also lonely, Ryan, very lonely." The following days unfolded in a strangely comfortable routine. Ryan had checked into a boutique hotel in West Loop, but spent most of his time in Brooklyn, specifically at the small bookstore Mia had inherited from her parents. Chapter's bookstore was located on a charming corner of Harmony Street, painted mustard yellow with dark wood accents. The facade had 2 large windows displaying books carefully organized in thematic settings. This week, Mia had set up an exhibition on contemporary American literature, with plants, candles, and old photographs of Chicago in the background. A small wooden sign hanging above the door swayed gently in the breeze, announcing in cursive letters, "Chapters, where every story finds its reader." The interior was even cozier. Reclaimed wood shelves occupied all the walls, from floor to ceiling, filled with books organized by genre and author. In the center of the space, vintage armchairs and sofas formed small reading nooks, each with a floor lamp and a side table. The air carried that characteristic scent of aged pages mixed with the aroma of fresh coffee, coming from a small espresso machine installed in the corner. Free coffee for readers, as another handmade sign stated. Ryan arrived on Thursday morning carrying 2 paper bags. Mia was high up on a ladder, reorganizing the poetry section, wearing denim overalls and with her hair tied up in a messy bun. A few rebellious strands escaped and framed her focused face. "I brought grilled cheese and orange juice from the bakery on the corner," he announced, lifting the bags. "Mr. Smith recognized me. He said I've gained weight and that New York isn't good for a Chicagoan's skin." Mia came down from the ladder laughing. "Mr. Smith is 83 years old and knows everyone within a 5-block radius. He still comments that you used to steal cheese bread when you were a kid." "I didn't steal. I just took one extra because he always put it there on purpose." Ryan placed the bags on the counter, an antique piece of solid wood that must have been at least 50 years old. That was a brilliant marketing strategy, by the way. It turned me into a loyal customer. They ate sitting in the reading nook, and Ryan watched Mia devour the grilled cheese with an appetite that made him smile. She really ate without pretense, licking her fingers when the butter dripped. "So," he began, wiping his hands on the napkin, "tell me about this project with the kids from the neighborhood. How did it start?" Mia's face lit up in a way he hadn't seen since he arrived. "Oh, that!" She settled into the armchair, hugging her legs. "It started about 5 years ago, kind of by accident. There was a boy, Ethan, who kept hanging around the bookstore but never came in. One day he finally came in and was looking at the children's books, but when I asked if he needed help, he ran out." Ryan leaned forward, intrigued. "And then? That's when I started leaving the door open and putting some picture books in a basket outside with a sign, 'Take one, read, return whenever you want.' Ethan started taking the books. He always returned them the next day, perfectly cared for." Mia smiled at the memory. "Until one day he came in and asked if I could read to him because he didn't know how to read well yet. He was 9 years old and behind in school." "And you became his teacher?" "I became his teacher and eventually taught 17 more kids." She got up and went to a folder on the counter, pulling out some sheets of paper. "Look at this." Ryan took the sheets. They were essays, some written in shaky, childlike handwriting, others in more confident teenage script. All had the heading Chapters Project, Reading and Writing. He started reading one of them, written by a girl named Lily, 13 years old. "Before I met Aunt Mia and the bookstore, I thought books were only for rich people. My mum works cleaning houses and never has money for buy a book. But Aunt Mia lent me all the Harry Potter books, and now I know that we can travel the whole world without leaving our place. I want to be a writer when I grow up, so I can help other kids travel too." Ryan felt a lump in his throat. "Mia, that's amazing." "They are amazing," she corrected, sitting back down. "I just do the obvious. I open the door and share something I love. They do all the hard work of believing they deserve to be here, that stories are for them too." "Have you thought about expanding this, institutionalizing, seeking funding, turning it into a bigger project?" Mia grimaced. "I've been suggested that before. But bureaucracy kills spontaneity, you know. The moment I have to report to some agency, follow specific curriculums, hit targets, it's no longer about genuine connection, it's about numbers. But with funding you could reach more kids, or I could lose the essence of what I do." She looked at him firmly. "It's not about quantity, Ryan. It's about quality. It's about looking into Lily's eyes and knowing exactly which book will make her heart race. It's about sitting with John and letting him read aloud for the first time without fear of making mistakes. That can't be scaled. Ryan leaned back in the armchair, processing. It was a completely opposite philosophy to his. In the corporate world, scaling was everything. Growth, expansion, reach. But as he looked at Mia, at the genuine passion in her eyes, he wondered if there was wisdom in keeping some things small and perfect instead of big and diluted. "Tell me about you now," Mia asked, changing the subject. "I want to know about Ryan, who became a CEO of a multinational. How was it? Was it everything you imagined?" Ryan hesitated. How to explain without sounding arrogant, or worse, empty? It was intense. I started as an intern at a tech startup in Chicago, working 18 hours a day, sleeping at the office. 3 years later, the company was bought by an American giant, and they brought me along. 5 more years, and I was leading the innovation department. By 28, I launched my own company with 2 partners. Tech Vision started developing artificial intelligence solutions for business management. Today, we have contracts with half of the Fortune 500 companies. Wow! Mia whistled softly. And what's that like? Having so much power? Lonely. The word slipped out before he could filter it. It's incredibly lonely, Mia. Sorry for the curse, but it's the truth. She shook her head, indicating that the curse didn't bother her. Why? Because the higher you climb, the fewer real people there are around you. Everyone wants something. Investment, connection, opportunity. You never know if someone likes you or your bank account. He ran his hand through his hair, a gesture of frustration. I dated a few women. It never lasted more than a few months. There was always this feeling of performance, that I had to be Ryan the CEO, not Ryan the person. "And here?" Mia asked softly. "How do you feel here?" Ryan looked her in the eyes. "Like I can breathe for the first time in years." The silence that followed was different. It wasn't uncomfortable, but laden with mutual understanding. 2 people who had taken radically opposite paths, both arriving at versions of loneliness. "Come," Mia suddenly stood up. "I want to show you something." She led him to the back of the bookstore, where a turquoise-painted door led to a small backyard. Ryan didn't expect this. In the middle of Brooklyn, where every square meter was worth gold, there was a secret garden. Jasmine climbed a wooden trellis, pink roses bloomed in clay pots, and a small iron table with 2 chairs sat under the shade of a fruit tree laden with berries. "My sanctuary," Mia announced, opening her arms. "When the bookstore gets too crowded, when the world gets too heavy, I come here." Ryan walked over to the fruit tree and picked a berry, squeezing it between his fingers. The sweet purple juice dripped. "I remember when your dad planted this tree. You must have been about 10. 9, and you helped me hold the seedling while he dug the hole." Mia moved closer, standing beside him. "Every time I pick the berries, I remember that day. Dad saying we were planting memories, not just a tree." He was right. Mia picked several berries and placed them in a small jar on the table. "Sit here with me. Let's just exist for a while." They sat in the iron chairs, eating berries in silence, listening to the sounds of the city in the background, distant honks, neighbors chatting, the song of some stubborn bird resisting urban advancement. The May sun filtered through the leaves, creating patterns of light and shadow that danced over the table. "Mia," Ryan began, breaking the silence, "can I ask you a personal question?" She looked at him sideways, suspicious but curious. "Depends on how personal." "Why have you never left Chicago? With your talent, your passion for books, you could be anywhere, big publishers, international projects." Mia chewed a berry slowly before responding. "Because this is where I belong. You know that thing about roots? She pointed to the fruit tree. I'm like that tree. I need this specific soil, this climate, this community to thrive. If I were transplanted, I might survive, but it wouldn't be the same. Have you never wanted to see the world? Wanted? Sure. But wanting and needing are different things. I travel through books, Ryan. I know Paris through Hemingway, Tokyo through Fitzgerald, Lagos through Morrison, and when I close the book, I'm home. It's the best of both worlds. Ryan smiled. You've always been like this, intensely yourself. And you've always been the opposite, always wanting more, always looking to the horizon. She turned her body completely. To face it, we were an unlikely pair of friends, weren't we? We were, he agreed, but we were also best friends, do you remember? I remember everything, Ryan. Her voice dropped. Every conversation, every laugh, every impossible plan we made. I remember when you said you were leaving, that you couldn't stay here because you'd die of boredom. I remember being happy for you and devastated for myself at the same time. Mia, no, let me speak. She raised her hand. I need to say this. When you left, a part of me went with you. The part that believed in possibilities, you know. I became smaller, more cautious. I built a beautiful life, yes, but I also built walls. Tall walls. Ryan felt his heart tighten. I'm so sorry. I should have come back. I should have kept in touch for real. No. Mia shook her head. You did what you needed to do. I don't blame you, Ryan. I never did. But I also never completely got over it. And that's why... She took a deep breath. That's why I called you. Because I'm tired of living with ghosts. I need to face you, the real Ryan, not the idealized memory I built over 20 years. I need to see if there's still something real between us, or if it's just nostalgia. The brutal honesty of her words left him speechless. There, in the secret garden under the fruit tree, Mia had just laid on the table something he didn't even know he was feeling too. And what if it is real? He asked, his voice hoarse. What if it's not just nostalgia? Mia looked at him with those honey-colored eyes that seemed to see right through him. Then we'll have to figure out what to do with it. The following week brought a routine that Ryan could never have imagined for himself. He woke up early at the hotel, went for a run in Central Park. He discovered that Mia also ran there every morning, and they started meeting at 6:30 at the entrance of the avenue. After the run, they had breakfast coffee at a kiosk that sold cornbread and freshly brewed coffee, still panting and sweaty, talking about trivialities and depths with the same ease. It was a clear Friday when Mia invited him for dinner at her house. Nothing fancy, she had warned. I'm making chili. I still remember it's your favorite dish. Ryan arrived promptly at 8 in the evening, carrying 2 bottles of wine. A full-bodied red that his sommelier in Los Angeles had recommended, and, after thinking it over, a simpler bottle he bought at the local wine shop, sensing that Mia would appreciate the second choice more. He was right. When he offered both, she took the bottle from the local shop without hesitation. This one is from Mr. Johnson, from the wine shop on Girasol Street. He personally selects each wine. I bet it has a better story than any expensive French label. The table was set with charming simplicity. A white linen tablecloth with embroidered edges, hand-painted ceramic plates, simple glass cups. In the center, a vase with white daisies picked from the garden. The clay pot with the chili was steaming in the center, surrounded by bowls of cornbread, sautéed greens, orange slices, crispy bacon, and salsa. I made everything from scratch, Mia announced proudly as she served the portions. I soaked the beans since yesterday. The meats have been cooking since 2 in the afternoon. My mom used to say that rushed chili has no soul. Ryan took the first bite and closed his eyes. Mia, this is There are no words. It's exactly how I remembered. Better, even. She smiled, satisfied, and poured 2 generous glasses of wine. So, tell me more about your travels. You said you've been to 12 countries in the last 3 years. What's that like? Living out of a suitcase? Actually, I don't live out of a suitcase. I have apartments in 3 cities, Los Angeles, London, and Singapore, but I don't know if it's really living, you know? Ryan took a sip. Of wine. They're more like operational bases than homes. I hire interior designers who make everything impeccable and impersonal. There are no photos, no stories. I can come back after 6 months away, and it feels like I never left, because I was never really there. Sounds lonely, Mia observed, echoing his own words from days before. It is, but it's functional. Or at least I thought it was until I came back here and sat at this table, eating this chili, and realized how much I gave up on real things. Mia studied him for a moment, then got up and went to the bookshelf in the living room, returning with a blue hardcover book. Have you read The Little Prince? I think I read it as a child. There's a quote here that has always stuck with me. She opened the book to a page marked with a handmade bookmark. It was the time you devoted to your rose that made your rose so important. Do you understand? It's not about having an apartment in Los Angeles or Singapore. It's about dedicating time to something until it takes root in you, and vice versa. Ryan fell, silent, processing. And you dedicated time to this here, this house, the bookstore, the people in the neighborhood. I dedicated my whole life. Mia sat back down, swirling her wineglass between her fingers. And there are days I wonder if it was the right choice, if I'm not just a coward who was afraid to take risks. You? A coward? Ryan almost laughed. Mia, you're the bravest person I know. Why? Because I stayed? Courage would have been to leave, to risk everything like you did. No. Ryan set his fork aside and leaned over the table. Courage is building something that matters, slowly, brick by brick, even when no one is applauding. Courage is continuing when there are no spotlights, when there is no recognition. Do you think what I did was courageous? I just followed obvious incentives. Tired of disappointing good people or being disappointed by bad people? Ryan took a deep breath. Money, status, power. Any ambitious fool would do the same. But what you did, that takes courage, letting go of the noise of the world to hear what really matters. Mia blinked quickly, and Ryan noticed tears forming in her eyes. No one has ever talked about my choices like that. Then the people around you are blind. She let out a wet laugh, wiping her eyes with the back of her hand. You've always been good with words when you wanted to, you know. I remember when you convinced the school principal to let us organize that science fair on Saturday, even though it was against the rules. And you put together that project on constellations that won first place. We made a good team. The past tense hung between them like an unasked question. Did they? Or did they still? Ryan finished his second glass of wine and felt the liquid courage loosening his tongue. Mia, can I ask you something that's been on my mind since I got here? She looked at him, cautious. Go ahead. Why are you single? Not in the sense of, there's something wrong with you, but genuinely, how is it possible that no one has won you over in 20 years? Mia became very quiet. She filled her glass again, took a long sip, and then another. Do you really want to know? Only if you want to share. She stood up from the table and walked, and to the window that faced the street. She stood there, back to him, her shoulders tense. When she spoke, her voice was low but firm. I've had boyfriends, 3 serious relationships to be exact. The first was at 22, a university history professor. It lasted 2 years. He wanted me to move with him to Washington, D.C. when he got a government job. I didn't want to. He said I loved my books more than I loved him. Maybe he was right. Ryan said nothing, just listened. The second was at 28, a lawyer who frequented the bookstore. Kind, smart, stable. He proposed to me after a year and a half together. I said I needed to think. I thought for 3 months. Every time I tried to imagine waking up next to him for the next 50 years, I felt nothing, neither good nor bad, just nothing. I ended the relationship. He was devastated. I felt like an idiot. And the third? Mia turned to face him, leaning against the windowsill. The third was 4 years ago. A writer who came to give a talk at the bookstore. It was intense from the start. We talked for hours, had an intellectual connection like I've never had with anyone. He understood my passion for literature in a way that others never did. What happened? He was married. The words came out like stones. I found out 6 months later. He had a wife and 2 daughters in Denver. He came to Chicago for work once a month, and those 4 or 5 days were our entire relationship. When I confronted him, he cried, apologized, said he would get a divorce, that I was the love of his life. I ended it right then, blocked all his contacts. I never saw him again. Ryan felt anger rising in his chest. Son of a bitch. Yeah, that's exactly what I thought. Mia returned to the table and sat down, but didn't look at him. After that, I stopped looking. I got tired of disappointing good people or being disappointed by bad people. I focused on the bookstore, the kids, the community. It's a good life, Ryan. It's not the life I imagined at 15, but it's good. But it's lonely, he echoed her own words. Extremely. She finally lifted her eyes. There are nights I lie in that bed, a room where I grew up, and feel a void so big that it seems like I'm going to be sucked into it. There are Sundays I turn on the TV just to have the sound of another human voice in the house. There are dinners I make chilly like this and eat alone, pretending everything is fine. Ryan reached across the table, taking her hand. You're not alone now. But you're leaving, Ryan. In a week, 2 at most. You'll go back to your storyless apartments, your international meetings, your life, and I'll be here as always. What if I don't want to leave? The silence that followed was thick. Mia looked at his hand over hers, then at his face, searching for signs that he was joking or too drunk to know what he was saying. Don't say that if you're not serious, she said, her voice trembling. Please, I've already rebuilt my life once after you left. I don't know if I can do it again. Mia, Ryan squeezed her hand. I've spent the last 20 years chasing an ever-growing void. I called it success, ambition, fulfillment. But here with you in these few days, I've felt more alive than in the last 10 whole years. That has to mean something. It means you're in a phase of nostalgia. It will pass. No, he shook his head vehemently. It's not nostalgia. It's recognition. That I sacrificed the wrong things for the wrong reasons. That I built an empire but forgot to build a home. That I conquered the world but lost myself in the process. Mia gently withdrew her hand. You're idealizing this, Ryan. My life, me. You're tired of your routine, and I represent a fantasy of simplicity. But simplicity is not the same as happiness. You'd be bored in a week. Then let me find out. Let me stay longer. I work remotely. I can stay as long as necessary. For what? To make sure it really doesn't work? To ruin the good memories we still have? To make sure it does work. Ryan stood up and walked around the table, kneeling beside her chair. Mia, look at me. I'm not asking wedding. I'm not asking for eternal commitments. I'm asking for time. Time for us to discover if this connection I feel, and I know you feel it too, is real. Is it really that absurd? Mia stared at him, and he saw fear in her eyes, genuine fear. What if it is real? What if we find out it works? Are you going to give up your company? Am I going to abandon the bookstore? How do 2 such different lives fit together, Ryan? I don't know, he admitted with brutal honesty, but I know that spending the rest of my life wondering what if will destroy me, and I think it will destroy you too. She closed her eyes, taking a deep breath. When she opened them again, there was determination mixed with fear. There's something you need to know before we go any further. Anything. Mia stood up, forcing him to do the same. She walked back to the shelf, but this time she didn't pick up a book. She just stood there, facing away, gathering courage. I've never had a complete intimate relationship. Ryan furrowed his brow, not understanding. You mean? I mean that at 37 I'm still a virgin. The words came out quickly, almost in a rush. Not because of religion, not because of trauma, by choice, because I've never found someone with whom the physical and emotional connection aligned completely, and now it's become this huge weight, this impossible expectation, this thing that defines me in ways I hate. Ryan stood completely still, processing. Of all the revelations he could have anticipated, this one was not on the list. Mia finally turned to face him, her eyes shining with unshed tears and something that looked like defiance. So that's it. Now you know. You can run away if you want. I won't judge you. I know it's a lot to process, especially for someone like you, who has probably had dozens of— Mia, stop! Ryan crossed the room in 3 steps and held her shoulders. Stop talking like this is something wrong or shameful. Isn't it? Her voice came out small. A woman almost 40 who never— It's the bravest thing you've told me so far, he interrupted her. Mia looked at him with a mix of disbelief and relief so palpable that Ryan felt his chest tighten. She had prepared herself for rejection, for mockery, maybe even for pity. All the reactions she had probably faced when sharing this truth. What she didn't expect was simple and straightforward acceptance. You don't think it's strange? She asked, her voice still trembling. I think it's coherent. Ryan released her shoulders but didn't step back. With everything you've told me about your life, your choices, your values, you've never done anything halfway or under external pressure. Why would this be different? Mia let out a laugh that sounded half like a sob. Most people don't see it that way. My cousin said I had fetishized the act so much that I had made it impossible for any real man to meet my expectations. My therapist, yes, I've been in therapy for 6 years, suggests it might be a defense mechanism against intimacy. And what do you think? Ryan asked gently. She walked over to the beige couch and let herself fall onto it, suddenly looking exhausted. Ryan followed her, sitting beside her but keeping a respectful distance. I think it's simpler and more complicated than any diagnosis, Mia began, looking at her own hands. You know when you read an exceptional book and then try to read others in the same genre, but none come close? It's kind of like that. I've had deep emotional connections with people where there was no physical attraction. I've had intense physical attraction with people where there was a lack of emotional connection, but never both at the same time, to the same degree, with the same intensity. And she paused, choosing her words carefully. I needed both. I couldn't separate my body from my soul and give one without the other. That's not a flaw, Mia. It's integrity. Integrity that has left me alone. She finally looked at him. And now it's become this giant elephant in the room in any potential relationship. Men get scared. Some get excited by the idea of being the first, as if it's some trophy. Those I send away immediately. Others freeze up with the responsibility, afraid of getting it wrong, of hurting me, of not living up to 2 decades of expectation. And the longer it goes on, the bigger the expectation grows. It's an endless spiral. Ryan was silent for a moment, organizing his thoughts. When he spoke, his voice was steady but gentle. Can I tell you something? Something I've never told anyone? Mia nodded, curious. My first serious relationship was when I was 20. a beautiful, smart, confident college classmate. We lasted 8 months. When we broke up, she told me something I've carried with me ever since. She said that being intimate with me was like having sex with an efficient robot, technically competent, but emotionally absent. That she felt lonelier afterward than before. Mia blinked, surprised by the vulnerability of the confession. After her, I had dozens of relationships. Some lasted months, most weeks, or just nights. I learned all the techniques, studied it like a project in efficiency. I became objectively good at sex. He let out a bitter laugh, but her words never left my head, because she was right. I was never really present. I was always thinking about the next deal, the next meeting, the next conquest. I used people as an escape valve, as physical exercise, as ego confirmation. But real intimacy, genuine connection, never. He turned fully to face her. So when you tell me you've waited for a genuine connection before giving yourself physically to someone, I don't see that as a problem. I see it as wisdom I never had. You spared yourself decades of empty encounters that only amplify loneliness. I didn't spare myself. Which of us made the smarter choice? Mia wiped her tears. Tears had begun to flow silently. How do you do that? Do what? Take the things I'm most ashamed of and turn them into, I don't know, into something that almost sounds beautiful. Because they are beautiful, Mia. You're just looking at them from the wrong angle for too long. She leaned in, resting her head on his shoulder, and Ryan instinctively wrapped his arm around her. They stayed like that for long minutes, just breathing together, the weight of the conversation settling between them. I'm scared, Mia finally whispered against the fabric of his shirt. Of me? Of us? Of what could happen? Of what might not happen? She pulled back to look him in the eyes. I feel something for you, Ryan. I've always felt it. Even when you left, even during these 20 years, you've always been this constant ghost in my life. The impossible ruler against which I measured all the other men. And now you're here, really here, saying those things I've wanted to hear for decades. And I'm terrified that this is too good to be true. Ryan took her face in his hands, forcing her to maintain eye contact. I'm scared too, terrified to be honest, because for the first time in my life, there's something I want and I can't just buy it, negotiate it, or conquer it through strategy. It depends on time, patience, building something real. And I don't know if I'm good at that. I'll probably mess up a lot, say the wrong things, frustrate you with my inability to slow down. That's not helping, she said, but there was a small smile on her lips. But I will try, Mia. I will really try. For the first time, I want to build something that isn't. A business, a company, an empire. I want to build us, even not knowing how. And what if it doesn't work? What if we find out we're incompatible in every practical way? Then at least we'll know. We will have truly tried, and we won't spend the rest of our lives with what-ifs. Mia took a deep breath, then nodded slowly. Okay, let's try, but with rules. Rules? Yes, rules. Boundaries. Clear expectations. She straightened up, going into practical mode. First, you can't just solve my problems with money. If the bookstore is having financial difficulties, and it is, you can't just throw money at it. That would create an impossible power imbalance. Ryan wanted to argue, but forced himself to nod. Okay. And the second? Second, we take it slow. Very slow. I'm not jumping into bed with you because I'm emotionally vulnerable and you're saying all the right things. I need to be sure this is real, not just reactivated chemistry and nostalgia. I completely agree. And he truly did. The idea of rushing anything with Mia felt wrong. Third, you need to be honest about your life, about meetings, trips, obligations. I don't want To be the secret girlfriend you visit when you're in Brazil. If we're going to do this, it has to be open, serious, real. Mia, I would introduce you to the company president tomorrow if you wanted. I have nothing to hide. And fourth, she hesitated, biting her lower lip. Fourth, you can't promise me eternity or guaranteed happy endings. Just honesty in the present. Because I've been left before when promises weren't kept, and that hurts more than never trying. Ryan felt the weight of that rule. She was asking him not to do exactly what he wanted to promise her the world, the moon, everything she wanted. But he also understood. Empty promises were worse than honest silence. Agreed. Brutal honesty, realistic expectations, one day at a time. One day at a time, she repeated, like a mantra. They sealed the agreement with a long, tight hug. When they pulled apart, Mia checked the clock on the wall and gasped. Oh my God, it's almost midnight, and we haven't even cleaned the table. They worked together in the kitchen, washing dishes, putting away leftovers, drying pots. There was a domestic intimacy in the act that was both comfortable and laden with meaning. Every accidental touch of hands, every synchronized movement seemed to promise future possibilities. When everything was clean and organized, Ryan grabbed his coat. I should go. Let you rest. Mia walked with him to the door. Ryan? Thank you. For what? For listening, for not judging, for coming back. He leaned in and gently kissed her forehead. Thank you for letting me come back. On the street, walking back to the hotel, he had dismissed the Uber, needing the fresh air and time to process. Ryan pulled out his phone. He had 17 unread messages, 8 missed calls, and endless notifications of urgent emails. His partner in New York was frantic over a decision regarding an acquisition in Korea. The CFO needed immediate approval for an investment. The assistant was confused about the cancellation of the 3rd week in a row of appointments. He took a deep breath and typed a message to the company's executive group. I will be working remotely from Chicago indefinitely. Meetings by video conference only. Urgent decisions will be delegated according to established hierarchy. This is non-negotiable. Before he could reconsider, he hit send. His phone exploded with notifications immediately. He silenced it and put it back in his pocket. For the first time in his adult career, work would not be his #1 priority. The next morning, a cloudy Saturday in May, Ryan arrived at the bookstore at 9 in the morning with 2 coffees and a bag of warm cheese bread. Mia was opening the doors, wearing olive green chinos and a cream sweater, her hair down in natural waves. Good morning, he greeted, offering the coffee. I thought I'd stop by before the local market. You're still going, right? Her eyes lit up. You remembered. The market is practically religious for me. I never miss a Sunday. Then I'll go with you, if you want company. I do. She smiled, genuine and open. I definitely do. The local market. It was a sensory spectacle that Ryan had completely forgotten. Colorful stalls, stretched for blocks, selling everything. Antiques, crafts, vintage clothing, vinyl records, paintings, used books, plants, street food. The smell of fried empanadas mixed with incense and brewed coffee. Live music echoed from different spots. A violinist here, a samba group there, a lone saxophonist further down. Mia navigated the market with the precision of someone who knew each stall, each vendor. She stopped to chat with the gentleman selling used books, carefully examining each title, negotiating prices with the familiarity of old friends. Ryan watched her, fascinated. She was in her element, touching worn spines with reverence, smelling yellowed pages, smiling at the discovery of rare first editions. Look at this. She held up a faded red hardcover book. First edition of Captains of the Sands, 1937. It's a bit damaged, but still, it's a gem. How much does he want? $200. It's a fair price, actually. He could sell it for much more in a specialty store. She turned the book in her hands carefully, clearly passionate but hesitant. Ryan saw the hesitation and understood. $200 was probably a luxury for someone managing an independent bookstore with tight margins. He instinctively reached into his pocket, ready to buy the book for her, but stopped when he remembered the first rule: don't solve problems with money. Instead, he asked, "Are you going to buy it?" Mia sighed and carefully returned the book to the stack. "Not today. I need to pay my supplier on Monday, but I'll come back. Mr. Johnson always saves things for me." "Mia!" The vendor, an elderly man with white hair and thick-rimmed glasses, waved from behind the stall. "That John Steinbeck will be saved for you, all right? I know you sell it quickly in your bookstore. Pay when you can." She smiled, grateful. "Thank you, Mr. Johnson. I'll stop by next week." They continued walking, and Ryan couldn't stop thinking about that interaction. The mutual trust, the human flexibility, the economy of genuine relationships instead of cold transactions. It was a completely different world from his. They bought empanadas at the busiest stall. Mia insisted that this one specifically had the best cheese empanada in Chicago. They ate standing up, licking their fingers as the melted cheese dripped, laughing when Ryan burned his tongue for being impatient. "You need to slow down," Mia scolded him between laughs. "Let it cool a bit. Not everything in life needs to be consumed with maximum efficiency." "I'm learning," he admitted. "It's harder than it looks." They spent 3 hours at the market, and to Ryan it felt like 3 minutes. On the way back, carrying bags with books, a fern that Mia couldn't resist, and a bottle of artisanal whiskey that the vendor insisted they needed to try, Ryan felt something he hadn't felt in years: belonging. Simple and pure belonging. Monday arrived with a fine, persistent rain, the kind that turns Chicago into a maze of umbrellas and chaotic traffic. Ryan woke up early in the hotel, but instead of immediately turning on his laptop, as was his habit, he stood by the window watching the city wake up. Grey buildings rose in every direction, lit windows revealing lives happening simultaneously. Someone drinking coffee, another getting ready for work, a child being prepared for school. His phone vibrated. Message from Mia. "Good morning. The rain cancelled my run. Morning coffee at my place. I'll make a decent frittata." He smiled and replied immediately, "I'm on my way. 20 minutes. He arrived soaked, even with an umbrella. Mia opened the door wearing a navy cotton robe over flannel pajamas with a book print. He couldn't help but smile at the theme. "Come in before you catch pneumonia." She pulled him inside, grabbing a towel from the bathroom. "You're dripping on my handmade rug." "Sorry." Ryan took off his soaked shoes. "I should have ordered an Uber." "You walked in the rain. From the West Loop all the way here." She looked at him as if he had lost his mind. "I thought it would be romantic. I didn't account for the fact that May rain is kind of chilly." Mia rolled her eyes, but was smiling. "Go to the bedroom. There are my dad's clothes in the closet. Pick something dry while I put your clothes to dry." The bedroom was small and cozy, the same twin bed where she probably slept since her teenage years, covered with a handmade quilt. Shelves covered all available walls, obviously filled with books organized by some system only she understood. An antique desk occupied the corner near the window, with a 70s Olivetti typewriter as a decorative piece and a modern laptop contrasting with the vintage aesthetic. Ryan opened the closet and found carefully folded men's clothing, flannel shirts, worn jeans, a few wool sweaters. He picked a blue plaid shirt and a pair of jeans that would be big on him, but would do. There was something deeply intimate about wearing the clothes of Mia's late father, as if he were being accepted into deeper layers of her story. When he returned to the kitchen, barefoot, and with the sleeves of the shirt rolled up, he found Mia in front of the stove, cracking eggs into a bowl with precise movements. "Looks good," she commented, looking him up and down. "The shirt actually suits you. Dad had similar taste to yours. Classic, not too flashy." "Can I help?" "You can chop those tomatoes and the onion. And tell me, how did your company react when you said you were staying indefinitely in Chicago?" Ryan grabbed the knife and cutting board, starting to chop. Let's just say there was controlled panic. My partner called at 6 in the morning thinking I was having a nervous breakdown. The HR director subtly asked if I needed to talk to someone, and my mom, well, she still doesn't know. "Your mom doesn't know you're here?" "Mia." He stopped beating the eggs, surprised. "You know I'm in Chicago for work. You don't know that I'm here specifically with you." He kept his eyes on the cutting board. "My mother has strong opinions about who I should spend my time with." "Oh." Mia's tone grew colder. "I understand. The girl from Brooklyn isn't exactly in the same social circle as the Mitchells from the Gold Coast. That's not it." "It is, Ryan, you can be honest." She poured the eggs into the frying pan, the sizzle filling the uncomfortable silence. "Your mother has always been like that. I remember when we were 15 and she caught us sitting on that porch, the way she looked at me as if I was some kind of plague that would infect you." Ryan set the knife aside, feeling guilt weigh in his stomach. "You're right. My mother is elitist, prejudiced, and deeply concerned with appearances. But I'm not my mother, Mia, and honestly, I don't care about her opinion on this. You should. She is your mother. And you are—" He hesitated, searching for the right word. "You are important. More important than pleasing ridiculous social expectations." Mia served the frittata on 2 plates, adding the tomatoes and onions he had chopped, slices of mozzarella and some fresh basil leaves. They sat at the same table where they had eaten chili days before. "Eventually you're going to have to tell her," Mia said, cutting the frittata. "And when you do, it's going to be a problem. You know that, right?" "It will be. And we'll deal with it when we get there." Ryan took a forkful of the frittata. It was perfect, seasoned just right. "For now, I want to focus on us, on what we're building here." "And what exactly are we building?" Her question wasn't confrontational, just genuinely curious. "Because, from the outside, it looks like a millionaire CEO is having a midlife crisis and romanticizing a simple life he couldn't sustain for more than a few weeks." Ryan set his fork aside. "Is that what you really think?" "I don't know what to think, Ryan. I'm trying to be realistic. You live in a world of private jets, meetings with ministers, billion-dollar deals. I live in a world of paying rent on time, saving to buy used books, making frittatas at home because dining out is a luxury. They're completely different universes. What if I want to live in your universe? You think you want to, right now, but in a month, 6 months, when the novelty wears off and you realize that your life here is waking up, working, eating home-cooked meals and sleeping, no glamour, no exotic trips, no adrenaline from closing million-dollar deals." Ryan took a deep breath, forcing himself not to react defensively. She was being honest, laying out legitimate fears. He owed her the same honesty. "You're right to question. It would be irresponsible of me to make promises I don't know if I can keep." He held her gaze. "But it would also be cowardly of me not to try out of fear of failing. Yes, I live in a different world than yours, but that world has left me empty, Mia. Wealthy, yes. Powerful, yes. But profoundly, devastatingly empty. And these days with you? Eating empanadas at the market, helping to organize books, drinking coffee in this kitchen. They've made me feel more alive than closing any deal in the last 5 years." "Feelings don't pay bills," she said, but there was less conviction in her voice. No, they don't. But money doesn't buy purpose either. And I realized, perhaps too late, that I built a life with no real purpose beyond accumulating more zeros in my bank account. Mia was quiet for a long moment, pushing pieces of frittata around her plate. When she spoke, her voice was softer. I'm afraid to believe that, and then you find out you were wrong, that it was just a phase, a crisis, whatever it is, because I already know, Ryan. I already know that if we continue down this path, I'm going to fall in love for real. And if you leave again, I'm not going to promise that I'll stay forever, because I don't know how the future will unfold, Ryan interrupted. But I promise I won't leave without a fight, that if this doesn't work, it won't be because I didn't try with everything I have. Is that enough? It has to be. She finally met his eyes. Because it's all we can have. Honest attempts and real presence. They finished their morning coffee in a more comfortable silence. Ryan helped wash the dishes while his clothes dried on the line in the laundry area. Through the window, he watched the neighborhood waking up completely. The bakery opening, the man selling newspapers setting up his stand, children in uniforms running to catch the school bus. Mia, he said, breaking the silence. Tell me about the problems at the bookstore. Not to solve it with money, he quickly added upon seeing her start to protest, but because I want to understand. I want to know what you're facing. Mia sighed, leaning against the sink. The biggest problem is the rent. The landlord, a businessman named Richard Collins, decided that that piece of Brooklyn is too valuable for an old-fashioned bookstore. He wants to triple the rent when the lease renews in 3 months. Triple? That's outrageous. It's legal, she corrected bitterly. The lease allows for adjustments based on market value, and Brooklyn has skyrocketed in value in recent years. Designer shops, expensive restaurants, art galleries, all paying astronomical rents. An independent bookstore can't compete with that. Did you talk to him? Try to negotiate? I tried. He was politely inflexible. He said it's just business, nothing personal, that I should evolve with the neighborhood or find another place. She let out a humorless laugh, as if there were another place. That bookstore isn't just a business, Ryan. It's a community gathering spot. The kids know where to find me. Mrs. Cecilia comes every Thursday. The book club meets there every week. It was Monday night. If I move to another neighborhood, it's not just changing addresses, it's destroying an entire network of connections that I've spent years building. Ryan felt anger rising, the same anger he felt when he saw large corporations crushing small businesses in the name of progress. But he forced himself to think strategically, not emotionally. Is there a possibility of buying the property, taking rent out of the equation? The whole building is worth about $3 million. I have 28,000 saved up. She laughed, a sound devoid of joy. So no, that's not an option. What about a bank loan? With what guarantees? The bookstore barely makes a profit, Ryan. I survive, pay the bills, support social projects, but profit margin? Almost zero. No bank lends money to a business with margins like that. Ryan bit his tongue, literally, to avoid offering to buy the building right then and there. He could do it. $3 million was a ridiculous amount for someone with his wealth. But he knew that if he did, he would break the first and most important rule that Mia had established. More importantly, he would take away her dignity to fight her own battles. What are you going to do then? Mia straightened her shoulders, and Ryan saw determination replace the discouragement in her eyes. I'm going to fight. I've launched a community campaign to raise funds for a new space, raffles, bazaars, paid cultural events. The neighborhood is mobilizing. We've already raised 40,000 in 3 weeks. How much do you need? For the deposit, first month's rent, and adaptations for a new space? About 150,000. It's a mountain, but she smiled, genuinely this time. But this community has surprised me before. They understand the value of what we do there. It's not about books, it's about belonging. Ryan felt admiration grow in his chest. Here was a woman refusing the easy solution, choosing the hard path because it preserved her integrity and strengthened her community. How many business people did he know who would do the same? "Can I help in other ways?" he asked carefully. "Not with direct money, but maybe with strategy, consulting, connections with people who invest in social businesses." Mia studied him for a moment. "Would you do that, without trying to take control, without imposing your vision?" "I would, as a partner, not as a savior." She considered, biting her lower lip as she thought. "There's a meeting at the bookstore on Thursday night, campaign planning committee. If you want to come, listen, give input. You would be welcome." "I'll be there." The rain had finally stopped when Ryan prepared to leave. His clothes were dry, warm from the line. He changed in the bathroom, carefully folded the borrowed clothes, and returned them to Mia. "Thank you for the coffee this morning," he said at the door, "and for the honest conversation. I know it's not easy to be so direct. I need to be, with you and with myself." She leaned against the doorframe. "Ryan, that thing you said about feeling alive, I understand because I feel the same. It's scary, but it's real." He leaned in and kissed her forehead, letting his lips linger for an extra second. "One day at a time, remember." "One day at a time," she repeated. Ryan spent the following days working from a coffee shop near the bookstore, establishing his new routine. Video conference meetings from 8 to 11 in the morning, lunch break with Mia, more work in the afternoon, and evenings dedicated to getting to know the community around chapters. He was introduced to the Monday reading group, 12 people of varying ages, from a 19-year-old student to a 73-year-old retiree, all passionate about contemporary Brazilian literature. He met the children from the Tuesday and Thursday project, watching Mia teach with a patience and creativity that left him in awe. He had coffee with Mrs. Cecilia, the 81-year-old lady who visited the bookstore more to chat than to buy books, and listened to stories about Brooklyn when it was still a neighborhood of struggling artists and authentic bohemia. Each interaction revealed more layers of the life Mia had built. She was not just a bookstore owner, she was a weaver of community, someone who connected people through stories and created spaces where loneliness could be transformed into belonging. On Thursday night, Ryan arrived at the bookstore 15 minutes before the committee meeting. Mia was arranging chairs in a circle, and he helped silently, moving furniture and preparing coffee. Gradually, people began to arrive. Ryan recognized some faces: Mrs. Cecilia, Mr. Johnson from the antique fair, the mother of one of the children from the project. But there were also new people: a young priest from the local church, a cultural producer working with NGOs, 2 university architecture students. Mia began the meeting by thanking everyone for coming and updating them on the campaign numbers. "We've raised 56,000 so far. I've visited 3 potential spaces in the neighborhood, but they all have issues, either too expensive, too small, or poorly located for accessibility. What if we think outside the box?" The priest, introduced as Father Miguel, leaned forward. "The church has a hall that we only use on Sundays. It doesn't solve things permanently, but it could be a temporary headquarters while we look for something definitive." "Or a mobile bookstore," suggested one of the architecture students. "Adapted containers that can be set up in different spots around the neighborhood, less vulnerable to abusive rents." Ideas began to flow, each person contributing a different perspective. Ryan watched in fascination. It was like a corporate brainstorming session, but with heart. People were not there out of obligation or salary, but because they genuinely cared. When there was a natural pause, he cleared his throat. "Can I suggest something?" All eyes turned to him. Mia nodded encouragingly. Have you considered structuring this as a cooperative? Instead of Mia carrying all the risk alone, what if the bookstore belonged to the community? Each member would invest what they could, time, money, skills, and have a voice in the decisions. This would expand the pool of resources and distribute the risk. Silence. Then Mrs. Smith clapped her hands. That's it. I've always wanted to own a bookstore. I can invest the $2,000 I have saved. I could contribute with graphic design, offered one of the students. Marketing, visual identity, all for free as part of my portfolio. And I know lawyers who do pro bono work for social cooperatives, added the priest. I can make the connection. The meeting stretched on for another 2 hours, energy growing instead of diminishing. When everyone finally left, Mia collapsed into an armchair, exhausted but radiant. That was amazing, she said. The idea of the cooperative changes everything, Ryan. Why didn't I think of this before? Because you were thinking alone. He sat down beside her. But you're not alone. You never were, actually. You just needed to let people really help. Mia turned her face to look at him, and Ryan saw tears in the corners of her eyes. Thank you for being here, for understanding what this means. No need to thank me. This is where I want to be. And at that moment, under the soft lights of the bookstore surrounded by thousands of stories, Ryan knew with absolute certainty that he wasn't lying. The following Sunday dawned with a shy sun that promised to warm the afternoon. Ryan woke up to a message from Mia. Lunch at my Aunt Lily's today. She's curious to meet you. Are you up for the challenge? He smiled at the screen of his phone. Meeting the family was a significant step, a recognition that what was between them was becoming serious. He replied, What time should I arrive? And can I bring something? Noon. And just bring yourself, that's enough. Heads up, my Aunt Lily doesn't have a filter. Ryan arrived at Lily's house in Pinheiros, promptly at noon, carrying a bottle of wine and a bouquet of flowers, habits ingrained from decades of attending corporate dinners. The house was an old 2-story building, painted light yellow with flower boxes on the windows. Mia opened the door before he even rang the bell. She was wearing a simple navy blue cotton dress with small white flowers, her hair tied back in a loose ponytail. She was barefoot and had flour on her left forearm. You look beautiful, Ryan said, and he meant it. No makeup, no frills, just Mia being herself. And you're very formal, she shot back, looking at his impeccably pressed white dress shirt and grey dress pants. It's a family lunch, Ryan, not a shareholders' meeting. Before he could respond, a shrill voice came from inside the house. Mia, bring that boy inside before the neighbors start gossiping. Aunt Lily was a robust woman in her 60s, with short grey hair, rosy cheeks, and a flowery apron covered in splatters. She wiped her hands on the apron and assessed Ryan from head to toe without any embarrassment. So you're Ryan, she declared, the famous Ryan who broke my niece's heart 20 years ago and now decides to show up again. Aunt, Mia protested, turning red. What? Am I lying? Lily crossed her arms, but there was a playful glint in her eyes. Come in, boy, and you can leave those flowers there. My husband is allergic. The house smelled wonderful. Garlic sautéing, meat roasting, spices that Ryan couldn't identify individually, but together created an olfactory symphony. The living room was cozy and slightly chaotic, with family photos covering every available surface, plants in every corner, and a moss-green velvet sofa that had seen better days. Sit here, Lily ordered, pointing to the dining table already set with a red and white checkered tablecloth. I'll get my husband. Alan, stop sleeping and come meet Mia's boyfriend. He's not my boyfriend, Mia murmured, but not very convincingly. Not yet, Lily replied with a mischievous smile before disappearing down the hallway. Ryan and Mia were alone for a moment. He took her hand across the table. Your aunt is intense. I warned you. She practically raised me after my parents got sick. She doesn't hold back and thinks brutal honesty is a virtue." Mia rolled her eyes, but there was affection in her voice. Alan appeared, a tall, slender man with thick glasses and a gentle expression. He shook Ryan's hand warmly. "Don't mind Lily. She likes to scare off suitors, but it's all for show." "Suitor," Ryan repeated, enjoying the old-fashioned word. "And what else would you be?" Alan sat at the head of the table. "No one can handle Lily interrogating for pure politeness. If you're here, it's because you matter." Lunch was served on generous platters. Roasted pork with potatoes, fluffy white rice, baked beans, sautéed greens, crispy cornbread and salsa. Lily served abundant portions on each plate, ignoring polite protests. "So Ryan," she began as everyone was served, "Mia tells me you're this important tech company CEO. How much do you make a month? Go ahead, we're not formal here." "Aunt!" Mia nearly choked on the beans. "It's a valid question. I want to know if he can support a family or if he's one of those modern guys who thinks women should pay half of everything." Ryan, surprisingly, was not offended. There was something refreshing about Lily's lack of filter. "I earn enough to live comfortably," he replied diplomatically, "but Mia has made it clear that she doesn't want to be supported, so the question is somewhat irrelevant." "Oh, she said that." Lily shot a meaningful look at her niece. "Too proud for her own good, this girl. She's always been like that. Refused help from the family when her parents got sick. Insisted on taking care of everything herself." "Because I could take care of myself," Mia defended. "And you already had your own problems, Aunt. I wasn't going to burden you." "Burden?" Lily let out a harsh laugh. "Family doesn't burden, girl. Family shares the weight, but you never learned that properly." Ryan watched the dynamic with keen attention. There was history there, layers of old grief and deep love intertwined in complex ways. "And you, Ryan?" Alan interjected, subtly changing the subject. "Why did you come back now, after 20 years? It was the question Ryan knew would come, but for which he didn't have a completely honest answer. "Mia wrote me a letter. She asked me to come. And when I arrived, I realized I had left something important behind when I left." "And what would that be?" Lily didn't leave anything vague. Ryan looked directly at Mia. "Real connection, purpose, the feeling of belonging to something greater than my bank account." Mia blushed but didn't look away. "Beautiful words," Lily commented. "But words are easy. Actions matter. What will you do when the novelty wears off? When you realize that life in Chicago with a bookstore owner is very different from the life of an international CEO?" "Aunt, please," Mia pleaded. "No, she's right," Ryan interrupted. "These are legitimate questions, and the truth is, I don't know. I can't predict the future or guarantee that everything will work out perfectly, but I know I'm willing to try, to make real changes in my life, not just romanticized vacations." "What kind of changes?" Alan asked, genuinely curious. "I've already cancelled non-essential trips. I'm delegating more responsibilities to my executive team. I've shifted my focus from aggressive growth to sustainability. And I'm looking for an apartment here in Chicago, something that is truly mine, not just an operational base." Mia turned her head sharply. "You are? Looking for an apartment?" "I was waiting for the right moment to tell you," he admitted. "But yes, I saw some places in Lincoln Park and Brooklyn this week. Nothing decided yet, but I want to put down roots. Oh, here, real roots." Lily and Alan exchanged meaningful glances. Aunt Lily served more roasted pork on Ryan's plate, a gesture he correctly interpreted as provisional approval. "And your family?" Lily asked. "Does your mother know you're here dating the daughter of Mr. Smith from the bookstore?" Ryan felt discomfort tighten in his stomach. "My mother doesn't know the details yet." "Oh." The sound Lily made carried judgment and understanding in equal parts. "Because she wouldn't approve." Probably not, Ryan admitted. My mother has specific expectations about who I should be with. Expectations based on social status and wealth, not on character or compatibility. And are you going to let that stop you? The challenge in Lily's voice was clear. No. But I'm also not going to force an unnecessary confrontation before I'm sure of what I'm doing here. He looked at Mia. I don't want to drag you into family drama until we know this is real and lasting. So you're ashamed of her? Lily concluded coldly. No, Ryan protested vehemently. It's not shame, it's protection. My mother can be cruel when she wants. I don't want to expose Mia to that until we have solid enough foundations to weather any storm. I can speak for myself, Mia said softly, but there was fire in her eyes. And I prefer honest confrontation to paternalistic protection, Ryan. The lunch grew tense. Alan tried to lighten the mood by talking about football, then about the weather, then about anything that wasn't the elephant in the room. But the damage was done. Questions raised that couldn't be easily put back. After lunch, while Lily and Alan washed the dishes, categorically refusing help, Ryan and Mia stepped out to the small backyard. There was a hammock strung between two trees and an herb garden that Lily tended to with dedication. I'm sorry, Ryan began. Why? For putting you in an uncomfortable position. Your aunt is right. I'm postponing the inevitable with my mother because I'm afraid of her reaction. Mia sat in the hammock, making it sway slightly. It's not about your mother approving of me or not, Ryan. It's about you having the courage to choose your own life, independent of her expectations. If you can't do that, then maybe you're not as ready for change as you think. The words hurt because they were true. Ryan sat beside her in the hammock, the weight of both, of them causing it to sink and forcing them to be close. You're right, he admitted. I've spent my whole life indirectly seeking her approval, building an empire, making a fortune, becoming the kind of success she could showcase at charity events. And even now, at 37, I'm still worried about what she will think. Then stop. It's that simple. It is, and it isn't. Mia rested her head on his shoulder. It's simple to decide. It's hard to deal with the consequences, but you can't live to please your mother and live for yourself at the same time. At some point, you have to choose. I choose you, Ryan said immediately. Don't choose me. Choose yourself. Choose the kind of life you want to live, independent of me. Because if you choose me as a way to rebel against your mother, I'll become a symbol of something instead of a real person. And I don't want to be a symbol, Ryan. I want to be just me. He turned his face to kiss the top of her head. You are the wisest person I know. Or the most scared, she murmured, because a part of me doesn't want you to face your family, wants you to keep postponing, for this bubble we've created here to last a little longer before reality invades. Reality will invade anyway. I know. And when it does, it will be brutal. They swayed in the hammock in silence, listening to distant sounds of the city, dogs barking, children playing, the constant noise of traffic as the background soundtrack of urban life. Ryan? Mia broke the silence. Tell me something honest. If your mother really causes problems, if she forces you to choose between your family and this here with me, what would you do? Ryan didn't answer immediately because he wanted to be sure of the answer. Honestly, I know. My relationship with my mother is complicated. She is manipulative, controlling, difficult, but she is also my mother, the only close family I have. My father died when I was 23. I have no siblings. It's just her and me. And what if she puts you in a tough spot? Then I'll have to make a very difficult choice. And I hope I have the courage to make the right choice. He squeezed her hand. But Mia, whatever the choice, I don't Want you to think it has anything to do with your worth. It has to do with my own demons, my own weaknesses. That doesn't make it easier. I know, and I'm sorry for that." They returned to the house an hour later, finding Lily and Alan in the living room watching a game show on TV. Lily insisted on pushing huge takeout containers into Ryan's hands. "You're too skinny. You need to eat real food, not that overpriced restaurant junk." At the door, she pulled Ryan into a surprisingly tight hug. "You look like a good boy," she whispered close to his ear. "But if you hurt my niece again, I will personally hunt you down." "Understood." "Understood," Ryan replied, genuinely touched by the fierce protection. On the way back to Brooklyn, Ryan insisted on walking Mia home, even though it was about a 20-minute distance. They walked in comfortable silence. The afternoon sun painted the buildings gold, and the streets were filled with families returning from Sunday outings. "Your aunt is intense, but I liked her," Ryan commented. "She liked you, too. Otherwise, she wouldn't have given you the takeout. It's how she shows affection. Feeding people until they can't move anymore." Ryan laughed. "My mother shows affection through constructive criticism and impossible expectations. We all have our crosses to bear." At the door of Mia's house, Ryan hesitated. "Can I see you tomorrow?" "You always can." She leaned in and kissed the corner of his mouth, a chaste kiss, but loaded with promise. "Good night, Ryan." "Good night, Mia." He waited until she went inside and turned on the lights before stepping away. On the way back to the hotel, his phone buzzed. Message from his mother. "Ryan, I need to talk. To you. Urgent. I'm hearing things that worry me. Call me." Ryan stared at the message for a long moment. Reality was crashing in faster than he expected. He sighed and typed, "Tomorrow. I promise I'll call tomorrow." But as he put his phone away, a part of him knew that tomorrow would be the start of a battle he had been postponing for far too long. Night fell over Chicago, and Ryan stayed awake in the hotel, looking out the window at the city lights. Somewhere out there, Mia was in her single bed surrounded by books, probably awake. Too, also thinking about what was to come. Life was about to get complicated, but as Ryan finally fell asleep, his last thought was that complicated with Mia was better than simple and empty without her. And that truth, at least, he knew with absolute certainty. Monday dawned cloudy, with a threat of rain that never fully materialized. Ryan woke up with a knot in his stomach. There was no more delaying the conversation with his mother. He called at 9 in the morning, knowing that Helen Mitchell always had her morning coffee exactly at 8:30 and would be free shortly after. "Finally," was her greeting. 3 days ignoring your family obligations, Ryan. This is unacceptable." "Good morning to you too, Mother." He kept his voice neutral, years of practice making it almost automatic. "Don't come at me with sarcasm. I need you to come for lunch today, noon, no excuses." "Mom, I have noon, Ryan." She hung up without waiting for a response. Ryan looked at his phone with a mix of frustration and resignation. 40 minutes later, he was ringing the doorbell of the house where he grew up, a mansion in the Upper East Side. 3 stories of modern architecture, impeccably maintained gardens, and a garage that could hold 6 cars. The maid, Grace, opened the door, and her face lit up upon seeing him. "Mr. Ryan, I've missed you." She pulled him into a tight hug, completely forgetting the formalities that Helen insisted on. "You're too skinny, boy. Are you eating right?" "I am, Grace. I promise." Ryan smiled genuinely. Grace had worked for the family since he was 5, and she was more of a mother to him than Helen in many ways. "Your mother is in the office, and she is—" She lowered her voice. "In a mood." Ryan sighed. Of course she was. Helen's office was on the 2nd floor, an all-white and grey space with designer furniture and carefully curated artwork. She was sitting behind a marble desk, wearing an impeccable beige tailored suit. her blonde hair perfectly arranged in a low bun. At 62, Helen Mitchell was the picture of New York elegance, slim, well-groomed, with the posture of someone who had never doubted her place at the top of the social hierarchy. "Sit," she ordered without looking up from the papers in front of her. Ryan sat in the chair across from the desk, instantly feeling like a teenager being reprimanded. Some patterns never changed. Helen finally looked up. "So, Brooklyn, the bookstore owner's daughter. I'm waiting for you to tell me that the rumors that have reached me are completely unfounded." Ryan felt anger rising, but forced himself to stay calm. "That depends on the rumors. What exactly have you heard? That you're spending your days in a second-rate bookstore, helping some random woman organize shelves, as if you were some kind of assistant, that you're being seen at street fairs eating empanadas like some underprivileged person, that you've cancelled important company commitments to play at a simple life here." Each word was cutting. And worse, that you're romantically involved with this person. This person has a name. Mia. Ryan kept his voice steady. "And yes, I'm spending time with her. It's not casual, it's not a joke, and it's definitely none of your business." Helen let out a dry laugh. "None of my business. You're my son, Ryan, CEO of a company that carries our last name. Everything you do reflects on our family, on our reputation. I'm a 37-year-old man, Mom. I don't need your approval for my personal choices. Clearly you do, because you're making terrible choices." Helen stood up, walking to the window with precise movements. "I invested a lot in you, Ryan. Money, time, connections. I put you in the best schools, introduced you to the right people, opened doors you would never have access to on your own. And now you want to throw it all away for what? A teenage crush you should have gotten over 2 decades ago?" "It's not a teenage crush." "It's not?" She turned around, her icy blue eyes fixed on him. "So what? Is it? True love? Please, you're having a classic existential crisis, Ryan. It passes. All successful men go through this in their 30s, questioning their choices, romanticizing simpler lives, chasing fantasies of authenticity. It's pathetic and predictable. Or maybe," Ryan stood up as well, "I'm finally realizing that I built a life that doesn't make me happy, that I sacrificed important things for your approval and for people who don't really know me." Happiness. Helen practically spat the word. What a childish concept. Happiness doesn't pay bills, Ryan. It doesn't build companies. It doesn't maintain our position in society. Our position? Or your position? Ryan felt something breaking inside him, years of carefully controlled resentment starting to leak out. "Because I never asked to be your trophy, Mom. I never asked to be paraded around at your charity events as proof that you did something right in life." Helen's face turned white, then red. "How dare you?" "I dare because it's true." His voice rose, years of silence finally breaking. "You never cared about what I wanted, only about what I represented. The CEO's son. The poor boy you turned into a prince through connections and money. Your greatest charity project." I gave you everything," Helen shouted back, her composure finally cracking. "A life your father could never have given. Opportunities that came at a price." Ryan interrupted her. "The price of never being good enough, of always needing to prove my worth, of living in fear of disappointing you, of not measuring up to your impossible standards. If my standards are high, it's because I know your potential. I know what you can become if you don't let yourself be dragged down by inferior people." "Inferior people," Ryan repeated, his voice dangerously low. "Are you referring to Mia? A woman who dedicated her life to educating children for free, to building community, to making a real difference in people's lives. She's inferior compared to what? Your socialite friends who spend more on handbags than she earns in a year, but contribute nothing meaningful to the world. She is inferior in every way that matters." Helen didn't back down. No proper formal education, no connections, no ambition beyond a failing bookstore in a rundown neighborhood. She will drag you down, Ryan. She will turn you into mediocre. Or maybe she will remind me what it means to be human. Ryan grabbed his jacket from the chair. Maybe she will teach me that worth isn't measured in zeros in a bank account, that success isn't about how many ministers you know, but how many lives you truly touch. If you walk out that door now, Helen said, her voice trembling, if you choose that woman over your family, over everything we've built together, there's no going back. Do you understand that? Ryan paused with his hand on the doorknob. Are you making me choose? I'm giving you clarity. Either you are my son, part of this family, with all the responsibilities that entails, or you are just another stranger chasing foolish fantasies. There's no middle ground. He turned to face her. For the first time, he truly saw his mother, not as the imposing and intimidating figure that dominated his life, but as a scared and controlling woman who used power as a substitute for love. And he felt surprisingly more pity than anger. Then I choose to be a stranger, he said softly, because a true family doesn't force you to choose between your heart and your loyalty. A true family wants your happiness, not your obedience. Ryan, I love you, Mom. I always will. But I won't live trying to earn an approval that will never come. No matter what I do, it will never be enough for your standards. So I will stop trying. He left the office without looking back. He hurried down the stairs, finding Grace waiting in the hall with red eyes. She had obviously heard everything. Mr. Ryan, she began. Take care of her, Grace. Ryan embraced the woman who raised him more than his own mother. She will need it. Outside, under the gray sky of Chicago, Ryan took a deep breath for the first time. In hours, his hands trembled, adrenaline and relief mixing in his blood. He had done it. He really had. He took out his phone and called Mia. She answered on the second ring. Hi, she said, and he could hear the smile in her voice. Can I come over? To the bookstore? Always. Is everything okay? It is. And surprisingly, it was true. I just had the hardest conversation of my life, and I survived. I need to see you. I'll be waiting here. Ryan arrived at Chapters 20 minutes later, still slightly trembling. The bookstore was empty. It was 2 in the afternoon on a Monday, a dead time for business. Mia was organizing the display window, but stopped immediately when she saw his expression. What happened? She came down from the small ladder she was on, taking his hands. I talked to my mom. Or rather, I argued with my mom, or, even better, I broke up with my mother. The words tumbled out. She made me choose. Between her and you, between the life she wants for me and the life I want for myself. And I chose. Mia was very quiet. Ryan, you shouldn't have done that. What? Cutting ties with your family because of me. That's a lot of weight, a lot of responsibility. What if you regret it? What if in 6 months you realize you made the wrong choice? Ryan pulled her close, holding her face in his hands. Listen, I didn't choose you over my mother. I chose myself over her expectations. I chose to have a real life over a performative one. You are part of that, yes, but not all of it. It's about me finally having the courage to live the way I've always wanted to, but was too afraid to try. But, Mia, my relationship with my mother has been broken for years. I was just holding the pieces together out of obligation, guilt, habit. This conversation was going to happen eventually, with you or without you. You were just the catalyst, not the cause. Mia had tears in her eyes. Even so, losing your mother because of me. I didn't lose my mother. She gave me a ridiculous ultimatum, and I called her bluff. If she really loves me, she will find a way to get past this. If not, then it was never about real love, and I need to accept that. They stood in the middle of the bookstore, embraced, while the afternoon continued outside. Occasional customers came in and out, and Mia served them mechanically, but always returned to where Ryan was sitting in one of the armchairs, flipping through books without really reading. At 6 in the evening, when she closed the bookstore, Mia sat next to him. "Come have dinner at my place. Nothing elaborate, just rice, baked beans, and a fried egg. But you shouldn't be alone today. I don't want to trouble you. Shut up and accept the invitation." She smiled gently. "It's the least I can do after you turned your life upside down because of me." "I didn't. I know. But still, come." The simple dinner in Mia's small kitchen was exactly what Ryan needed. They ate with little conversation, the comfortable silence of two people who didn't need to fill every moment with words. Afterwards, they washed the dishes together, and Mia made chamomile tea. My grandmother's recipe to calm nerves. Sitting on the couch in the living room, with the lights dimmed and the warm tea in their hands, Ryan finally felt the tension of the day begin to ease. "Thank you," he said softly. "For what?" "For not making this about you. For understanding that this was something I needed to do for myself. For—" he paused, searching for words. "For letting me be weak today, without judgment." "You're not being weak. You're being brave." Mia rested her head on his shoulder. "Facing your family, especially a manipulative mother, is one of the hardest things anyone can do. You did it. Are you proud?" Ryan thought about the question. "I am scared too, but yes, proud." "Good. You should be." They stayed like that. For hours, just existing side by side. Ryan felt something settle in his chest, a peace he hadn't experienced in decades, perhaps never. He had let go of the rope that tied him to impossible expectations, and instead of falling, he was discovering that he knew how to fly on his own. When he finally got up to leave, it was already past midnight. Mia walked him to the door, and there, under the dim light of the entryway, she leaned in and kissed him. It wasn't a chaste goodnight kiss, but something deeper, recognition, gratitude, promise. When they pulled apart, both were breathless. "Stay," Mia whispered. "Mia." "Not like that, just stay. Sleep here on the couch. I don't want you to be alone at the hotel tonight." Ryan nodded, emotion tightening his throat, preventing words. Mia brought pillows and a blanket, made the couch ready, and kissed his forehead before going to her room. Lying on the couch that was at least a foot too short for his height, listening to the night sounds of the house, the ticking of the wall clock, the distant noise of passing cars, Mia's soft breathing in the room next door, Ryan finally fell asleep. And for the first time in years, he slept through the night without nightmares about disappointing someone or not being good enough. He woke up at 7 in the morning to the smell of fresh coffee. Mia was in the kitchen, still in her pajamas, making breakfast. When she saw him appear with messy hair and a wrinkled shirt, she smiled in a way that made his heart leap. "Good morning, temporary couch dweller. How did you sleep?" "Better than I expected, considering the couch is the size of a sardine," he stretched, feeling his back complain. "But honestly, I slept better than in the last 6 months on my $3,000 mattress. Must be the Brooklyn air. It's magical." She poured coffee into 2 large mugs. "Buttered toast?" "Please." They had coffee in companionable silence, and Ryan found himself thinking that he could get used to this. Simple mornings in a small kitchen, strong coffee and buttered toast, the company of someone who saw him as a person, not as a project or investment. "Ryan," Mia broke the silence, "what comes next?" "What do you mean?" "With your mother, with your life, with us." He thought carefully before responding. "With my mother, I don't know. I'll give her space to process. If she wants to talk like civilized adults, I'm open. If not," he shrugged, Then I'll focus on the relationships that are healthy. With my life, I'll keep doing what I've been doing, restructuring priorities, delegating more, creating something sustainable instead of just profitable. And with us, he took her hand across the table. With us, let's keep going, one day at a time, just like you said, building something real at our own pace, without pressure. Are you in? Mia intertwined her fingers with his. I'm in. And in that small kitchen, under the morning light of May, they sealed an agreement that felt far more significant than any million-dollar contract Ryan had ever signed. The following weeks brought a routine Ryan never imagined for himself, but it quickly became the most meaningful part of his life. He finally rented an apartment in Lincoln Park, a two-bedroom space in an old building with original hardwood floors, large windows that let in abundant natural light, and a small balcony where he placed 2 chairs and a little iron table. It didn't have the minimalist luxury of his international apartments, but it had something the others never had: personality. Mia helped him furnish the space, hunting for pieces in antique shops and thrift stores. A reclaimed wood bookshelf they found at the local flea market, a 6-seat dining table bought from an elderly couple moving to a smaller apartment, vintage lamps, worn but beautiful Persian rugs, paintings by unknown local artists. Each object had a story, and Ryan found himself caring for them in a way he never cared for his designer furniture. It's becoming a real in-home, Mia commented one Saturday afternoon as she helped hang raw linen curtains she had sewn herself. Not just another place where you sleep between trips. It's strange, Ryan admitted, holding the ladder for her. But good strange. I wake up in the morning and already know where things are. I know the neighbor in 302 who complains when the TV is too loud. I know the baker on the corner saves extra cheese bread for me because I showed up there 3 days in a row at the same time. Welcome to normal life. She stepped down from the ladder and assessed the work. The curtains are crooked. They look perfect. They're objectively crooked, Ryan. Perfectly imperfect, then. He pulled her into a hug from behind, resting his chin on top of her head. Like everything else in my life now. The bookstore was also evolving. The cooperative Ryan had suggested was taking real shape. 8 people had joined as founding members, each investing what they could, some with money, others with specific skills, all with time and dedication. Weekly meetings were held at the bookstore, and Ryan participated not as a leader, but as a consultant when asked. It was during one of those meetings, in early June, that the news came. Guys, Mia began, her voice tense. Richard Collins has accelerated the timeline. He wants a definitive answer on the contract renewal by the end of this month. Either we accept the new amount, which would be $9,000 a month, instead of the current $3,000, or we need to vacate in 30 days. A heavy silence fell over the gathered group. Mrs. Smith was the first to speak, her voice trembling. But we haven't even accomplished half of what we need yet. How are we going to find a new place, move, all in 1 month? We're not, Father Miguel said realistically. It's impossible. We would need a miracle. Ryan saw despair grow on Mia's face and felt his own frustration rising. He could resolve this with a phone call, a bank transfer, and the problem would simply disappear. But he knew that if he did that, he would break the trust he was building, undermine all the work of the cooperative, and turn Mia into someone financially dependent on him. What if we found investors, one of the architecture students suggested. People interested in social businesses, who understand the community value of what we do here. I've already tried, Mia replied. I sent proposals to 5 different foundations. 2 didn't even respond. 3 said it didn't fit their investment criteria. Because you're selling it wrong, Ryan heard himself say. All eyes turned to him. Sorry, I don't want to overstep, but you're presenting this as charity, like a business that needs rescuing. Investors don't want charity. They want measurable impact and sustainability. But we're a business that needs help, Mia pointed out. No, you are an innovative business model testing something scalable. Community bookstores operated as cooperatives with a strong social impact component. That's attractive to social impact investors. Ryan stood up, entering strategic mode. The problem is how it's being presented. Let me reframe the proposal, not change the content, just the packaging. Mia hesitated, biting her lower lip as she thought. You're not going to promise things we can't deliver. Never. I'll just present what you already do in a way that resonates with people who have money to invest in social causes. He looked around the room, but I'll only do it if everyone agrees. This is a collective decision. There was discussion, some wary, of bringing corporate language into a community project, others desperate enough to try anything. After 40 minutes of debate, they voted 7 in favor, 1 abstention. Mia, who said she couldn't vote due to a conflict of interest. Ryan spent the next 3 days completely reformulating the proposal. He created a clean but warm visual presentation with photos of the children from the project, with parental permission, testimonials from community members, data on measurable social impact, how many children were literate, how many books circulated, how many cultural events were held. He included realistic financial projections, a detailed cooperative model, and a gradual expansion plan for other bookstores in similar neighborhoods. When he presented it to the group, Mrs. Smith cried, "Is this us? Really? It looks so important." "It is important," Ryan said softly. "You just weren't seeing it from the outside." Mia remained quiet throughout the presentation, her arms crossed. When it ended, she asked to speak with Ryan privately. They went to the backyard, where the fruit tree was now almost bare, winter beginning to announce itself. "You made this seem much bigger than it is," she. Sitting next to her, he discreetly placed his hand over hers for a moment, not to guide, but to support. "Congratulations," Robert said afterwards, squeezing her hand. "You're doing something special here. I'm sure it will grow in ways you can't even imagine yet." When everyone left and the bookstore was empty, Mia let herself drop into one of the armchairs, exhausted. Ryan sat beside her, and they remained silent for long minutes. "We did it," she finally said, her voice filled with admiration. "We really did." "You did it. I just helped package it." "No, we did it." She turned her head to look at him. "You believed in me when I wasn't believing in myself. You believed in this project when I was ready to let it die. That counts." Ryan took her hand, intertwining their fingers. "Then we make a good team. The best." They left the bookstore together, locking the door under the unusual starry sky of Chicago, a rare night where the pollution dissipated and the stars dared to appear. They walked slowly to Mia's house, in no hurry, just existing side by side. At her door, Ryan hesitated. "Can I come in?" Mia studied him for a long moment. There was something different in his eyes. Not fear, but determination. "Yes, but Ryan, if you come in today, you won't sleep on the couch." His heart raced. "Mia, I don't want to pressure you. You're not pressuring me. I'm choosing." She opened the door, holding his hand. "I'm ready. Not because the project succeeded, not because I'm emotionally vulnerable, but because I trust you, and because I love you, and I don't want to wait for a perfect moment that will never come. This moment now, with you, this is the right moment." Ryan felt emotion tighten his throat. "I love you too, so much it scares me." "Then, come, and let's be scared together." They entered the house, gently closing the door behind them, letting the world outside continue spinning while they finally, after 20 years of waiting and 3 months of rebuilding, allowed themselves to be completely vulnerable with each other. It wasn't perfect. There was nervousness, awkward laughter, moments of pause to recalibrate. But it was real. It was honest. It was two human beings choosing intimacy, not just physical, but emotional, complete. And when dawn arrived, it found them intertwined in the small twin bed, fully awake, whispering about everything and nothing, building memories neither of them would ever forget. Was it worth it? Ryan asked, echoing the question she would ask him in the future. Every second of waiting, Mia replied, kissing him softly. Every second. The following months unfolded with an intensity Ryan had never experienced before. Not the frantic intensity of closing million-dollar deals, but something deeper and sustainable. It was the intensity of building a life that made sense, layer by layer, conscious choice by conscious choice. The cooperative found a perfect space 3 blocks from the original location of Chapters, an old warehouse that had been a printing house in the 70s. The space was spacious, with high ceilings, exposed wooden beams, and natural light streaming in through skylights in the ceiling. It needed renovations, but had immense potential. Ryan found himself spending Saturdays helping with the renovation, not hiring people to do it, but literally helping. Sanding wood, painting walls, carrying shelves. His hands, once impeccably cared for, developed calluses. His back ached at the end of the day, and he had never felt more alive. "Are you sure you're a CEO of a multinational?" joked Mr. Johnson one Saturday, watching Ryan climb a ladder to install lighting tracks. "Because it looks more like construction work." "Best compliment I've ever received," Ryan replied, smiling. Mia was flourishing in ways he hadn't anticipated. With the financial weight lifted and a real team to share responsibilities, she had the mental space to be creative again. She organized a series of literary events that quickly became a reference in Chicago. Poetry nights with live musicians, themed book clubs, meet and greets with independent authors, creative writing workshops. The educator hired with the extra investment was a woman named Julia, who graduated in pedagogy from a local university but was passionate about non-formal education. She and Mia developed a structured yet flexible curriculum for the children, and the project that once served 18 children now had a waiting list of 40. "We're going to need to expand faster than we thought," Mia commented one night, lying in bed next to Ryan. She now spent 3 or 4 nights a week at his apartment, and he at hers. They still hadn't officially lived together, but the lines were becoming increasingly blurred. "That's good, isn't it?" Ryan traced lazy patterns on her arm. "It's great. It's also terrifying." She turned to face him. "Every time something good happens, I'm waiting for the other shoe to drop. You know that feeling?" "I know it well. I've spent my entire adult life waiting to fail, waiting to not be good enough." He kissed her forehead. "But I'm learning that not everything needs to be a disaster waiting to happen. Sometimes things just work." "When did you get so wise?" "Since I started sleeping in uncomfortable twin beds with you." She laughed and pulled him in for a kiss that quickly deepened, the conversation temporarily forgotten. It was on a September morning, almost 4 months after the explosive conversation with his mother, that Ryan received an unexpected call. "Ryan." Helena's voice sounded different, older perhaps, or just more tired. "We need to talk." He was alone in the apartment. Mia had left early for a meeting with suppliers. "I'm listening." "Not over the phone, in person." There was a pause. "Please." The word "please" coming from Helena Mitchell was so rare that Ryan almost dropped the phone. "When?" "Today. Lunch. Not at my house. In some neutral place. You choose." Ryan suggested a discreet restaurant in Lincoln Park, far from both the Upper East Side and Brooklyn. Helen agreed. He arrived 15 minutes early, nervous in a way he hadn't felt since his teenage years. He ordered sparkling water and waited, watching the door. Helen walked in promptly at noon. Ryan barely recognized her. She looked visibly thinner, her hair less impeccably styled, and she wore elegant yet understated clothes, without the flashy jewelry she usually flaunted. She sat down without ceremony. "Thank you for coming." "You asked nicely. How could I refuse?" A ghost of a smile passed across her face. "Yes, well, I'm learning that authority has its limits." They ordered food. She a Caesar salad, he a mushroom risotto. Neither of them touched the bread. In the basket on the table. "So," Ryan began when the silence grew too heavy, "what has changed?" Helen took a sip of water before responding. "I had a lot of time to think, alone. Grace resigned 2 weeks after our discussion. She said she could no longer work for someone who treated her own child that way." Ryan felt a tightness in his chest. Grace had been more of a mother to him than Helen in many ways. Other employees left too. Friends stopped returning calls. Apparently word spread about my ridiculous ultimatum. She let out a humorless laugh. "I discovered that being feared is not the same as being respected, and forced solitude has a peculiar way of bringing clarity." "Mom, let me finish." She raised her hand. "I was terrible to you, not just that day but for years, decades perhaps. I turned you into a project instead of a son, a trophy instead of a person. And when you finally had the courage to live your own life, I tried to punish you for it." The words were so unexpected that Ryan was left speechless. "I don't know if I can completely change," Helen continued, her voice breaking slightly. "I'm 62 years old. My standards are deeply ingrained, but I want to try. I want to meet this woman who means so much to you. I want to understand what you've built that makes you happier than everything I pushed you toward." "Why?" Ryan asked, genuinely confused. "Why now?" Helen finally looked him directly in the eye. "Because you are all I have, Ryan. Your father is gone. I have no siblings. My friends are basically transactional acquaintances. If I truly lose you, I die alone. And recently, I've realized that dying alone scares me much more than losing social prestige." It was the most vulnerable thing Ryan had ever heard his mother say. He felt anger and pity mixing in complex ways. "I don't know if we can fix this," he said honestly. "There's a lot of history, a lot of hurt. It's not a matter of one lunch and everything is forgiven. I know. I'm not expecting immediate forgiveness. I'm hoping for a chance to truly know your world, to try to understand even if I disagree, to be present in ways I never have been before." The food arrived. They ate in silence for a few minutes, both processing. "There are conditions," Ryan finally said. "I'm listening. First, you treat Mia with respect. You don't have to adore her. You don't have to pretend to be her best friend. But basic respect, like you would treat any other human being. No condescending comments, no judgments about her life or choices." Helen nodded slowly. "Second, you accept that my life is different now. I'm not going back to being the CEO who travels all the time, who puts work above all, who measures success in dollar figures. That version of me is dead. And you need to know and accept who I am now. Third, therapy, you and I, separately, because we need professional help to untangle decades of toxic patterns. I'm already doing it. I started 2 months ago. You need to do it too." Helen was quiet for a long moment. "Therapy. I know. It's admitting vulnerability, something you've avoided your whole life. But it's non-negotiable, Mom. If you want to rebuild this relationship, you need to do the internal work too." "And if I agree to all this?" "Then we try. Slowly. Without unrealistic expectations on either side. And you, meet Mia when we are ready. Not immediately, but eventually." Helen set her fork aside. "I agree. With everything." Ryan felt something shift in his chest, not complete forgiveness, not magical reconciliation, but a crack of possibility where there had once been a solid wall. They finished lunch, talking about superficial things, the changes in the city, the books each was reading, Ryan's new apartment. It wasn't real intimacy, but it was a start. At goodbye, Helen hesitated, then did something completely out of character. She hugged Ryan. It was a stiff, awkward hug, but real. "Thank you," she whispered, "for not completely giving up on me." "You are my mother," Ryan replied simply. It was never about giving up. It was about finding a way to coexist without destroying each other. He told Mia everything that night. They were in his kitchen, she preparing pasta, it had become a Thursday tradition, he chopping vegetables for the salad. "How do you feel?" she asked, after he finished recounting the conversation. "Confused, relieved, cautiously hopeful, still angry about a lot of things." He set the knife aside. "But also proud of her. It's strange for Helen Mitchell to admit vulnerability, seek help, accept conditions instead of imposing them. That's revolutionary. I don't know if it will last, but the fact that she tried means something. And about me meeting her. How do you feel about that?" Ryan turned to face her. Afraid. Because even if she is trying, old habits die hard. She can be condescending without realizing it, make comments that seem innocent but are cutting, and I don't want you to get hurt by that. "Rafa." Mia turned off the heat and came to him. "I grew up poor in Chicago. I attended public school where most teachers were giving up. I worked. December arrived in Chicago, bringing that characteristic humid heat that transformed the city into a vast open oven. Ryan and Mia had spent the last 2 months searching for the perfect apartment, something that wasn't too big or too small, with natural light, space for books. Lots of books, Mia insisted, and in a location that worked for both of them. They found one in Lincoln Park, just 5 blocks from the new chapters. A 3-bedroom apartment in a 1960 building with huge windows, original hardwood floors, a spacious balcony overlooking treetops, and, the detail that made Mia decide immediately, a built-in library in the living room, created by the previous resident who was also a book lover. "It's perfect," she had whispered upon entering for the first time, reverently touching the wooden shelves. "It's ours," Ryan replied, already mentally calculating how long it would take to fill those empty shelves. Now, on Christmas Eve, they were putting the finishing touches on the decoration of the apartment that had officially become theirs 2 weeks ago. There was no Christmas tree. Neither of them was particularly religious, but there were yellow lights hanging on the balcony, vases with fresh flowers in every room, and that smell of home that comes from food being prepared with love. Mia was in the kitchen making her famous chili, wearing the apron Ryan had gifted her for her birthday in November, navy blue with embroidery that read, "Readers make better lovers." Ryan was in the living room, finishing assembling an additional bookshelf because they discovered that even the built-in library wasn't enough for all the books. "Ryan," Mia called from the kitchen, "how many people confirmed again?" He checked his phone. 12. Your Aunt Lily and Alan, Mrs. Smith, Father Michael, Julia, Mr. Johnson, Robert and his wife, and... He hesitated. "My mother." "And your mother," Mia repeated, her voice carefully neutral. It would be the first time Helen Mitchell would visit their apartment. The first time she and Mia would have a real interaction beyond the polite but tense greetings at the lunch Ryan had organized as a territorial acknowledgement meeting in October. That lunch had been complicated. Helen had tried, genuinely tried, but decades of prejudice don't disappear in months of therapy. There were comments about how charming it was that Mia dedicated so much time to charity, as if educating children were a hobby rather than real work. Questions about when They would officially make things happen with marriage, as if living together wasn't a real commitment. Observations about the simplicity of Mia's clothes disguised as compliments. Mia had endured it all with grace and dignity, responding with direct honesty but without aggression. When Helen suggested that perhaps Mia should dress better for Ryan's corporate events, she had calmly replied, "I present myself exactly as I am, Helen. If that isn't suitable for your social circles, then perhaps it's the circles that need to expand, not me that needs to shrink." The awkward silence that followed was broken by Ryan deliberately, changing the subject. But he had seen a flicker of something on his mother's face, not anger, but perhaps reluctant respect. "She will behave," Ryan said now, more to himself than to Mia. "She promised, and she's trying, really. Her therapist said she's making progress." Mia came into the living room, wiping her hands on the apron. "Ryan, I don't need your mother to love me. I don't even need her to like me. I just need her to respect you enough to accept your choices. The rest is negotiable." "You're too generous." "No, I'm practical. Emotional battles with mothers-in-law are exhausting and rarely productive. As long as she isn't openly hostile, I can handle passive-aggressive disapproval." She smiled, but there was weariness in her eyes. "I've survived worse." Ryan dropped the screwdriver and pulled her into a hug. "You shouldn't have to just survive. You should be celebrated." "By the people who matter, I am." She stepped back to look at him. "Whether your mother celebrates me or not is out of my control. But you celebrate me. Your Aunt Lily celebrates me. Our entire community celebrates me. That's enough." The intercom buzzed. The first to arrive was Mrs. Smith, elegant in an emerald green dress, carrying a huge platter of bread pudding. "For dessert," she announced, kissing both of them enthusiastically, "and let me see this beautiful apartment you've arranged." Gradually, the guests began to arrive. Lily and Alan brought wine and more wine. Christmas without wine isn't Christmas, it's just Tuesday. Father Michael showed up with a homemade walnut cake. Julia brought her girlfriend, an architect named Fernanda, who immediately fell in love with the huge windows. Mr. Johnson gifted them a first edition of The Great Certeau Paths, which made Mia cry. Helen was the last to arrive punctually at 7:30, as the invitation specified. She wore a beige linen suit, elegant but discreet by her standards, and carried an expensive bottle of champagne and a box wrapped in gold paper. "Ryan, Mia," she greeted both with polite but warm cheek kisses. "Thank you for the invitation." "Thank you for coming," Mia replied, equally formal, taking the bottle and the box. "Please, come in. I can introduce you to some friends." The living room was filled with overlapping conversations, laughter, the noise of people genuinely happy to be together. Ryan watched his mother discreetly as she navigated the space. He saw her assess everything with those analytical eyes. The mismatched antique and IKEA furniture, the shelves filled with books organized by incomprehensible criteria to her, the photos on the walls showing simple yet meaningful moments, the decor prioritizing comfort over impressing. "Your house is interesting," Helen commented when he approached her with a glass of wine. "It's our home," he gently corrected, "mine and Mia's, and I love every inch of it." Helen took a sip of the wine. "Wine. It's different from what I imagined for you." "I know, but it's exactly what I imagined for myself." They stood, side by side in silence for a moment, watching Mia tell an animated story to Mrs. Smith and Lily, the three women laughing heartily at something Ryan couldn't hear. "She's strong," Helen said abruptly, "stronger than I initially gave her credit for." Ryan turned to look at her, surprised. "At our lunch, when I made that stupid comment about her presenting herself better, and she responded to me with that brutal honesty." Helen shook her head. "No one responds to me that way, ever. People either agree to keep the peace or argue and storm out." But her? She just stated her truth calmly and let me deal with it. That requires a strength of character that I'm not sure I possess. Are you trying to tell me something, Mom? Helen took a deep breath. I'm trying to say that maybe I was wrong. About her. About what she represents in your life. About what you need to be happy. The words came out with difficulty, as if each one cost something precious. My therapist asked me a question in the last session. He asked, do you prefer to be right, or do you prefer to have your son in your life? And I realized I can't have both, so I'm choosing you, even if that means accepting a life for you that I would never have chosen. Ryan felt emotion tighten his throat. Mom, that means a lot. It doesn't mean I'm going to stop having opinions, Helen quickly added, reverting a bit to her controlling nature, or that I agree with all your choices, but it means I'm going to try, really try, to respect that they are your choices, not mine. That's all I ask. And also, Helen hesitated, then pulled an envelope from her bag. This is for you two. Christmas gift, or new house gift, or family peace gift. Call it what you want. Ryan opened the envelope. Inside was a legal document, a donation of shares from the family investment company, valued at about $5 million, equally divided between Ryan and the chapter's cooperative. Mom, I can't. Yes, you can. You built your own empire. You don't need my money. But that bookstore... She gestured vaguely in Mia's direction. That project needs long-term sustainability. Consider it an investment, or charity if you prefer. Or my inadequate way of apologizing for years of being a terrible mother. Ryan didn't know what to say. He hugged his mother stiffly at first, but she eventually relaxed, allowing herself to be genuinely embraced. Thank you, he murmured. This will change everything for the cooperative. Good, because if I'm going to have a daughter-in-law who prefers books to jewelry, I might as well make sure her books have a secure financial future. Ryan laughed, genuinely. It was a typical Helen comment. Half insult, half compliment, totally her. But there was affection there, hidden beneath layers of sarcasm and pragmatism. Dinner was served. At 8:30, everyone squeezed around the dining table that Ryan and Mia had specifically bought for moments like this. Large enough to accommodate 12 people, rustic reclaimed wood, each scratch and imperfection telling a story of a life lived. The chili was perfect. Mrs. Smith declared it almost as good as the late mother of Mia, the highest praise possible. Lily insisted on knowing the recipe for the sautéed greens, swearing that hers never turned out so green and crispy. Father Michael led a secular yet meaningful toast to family. Not the one we were born into, but the one we choose and build. Helen remained quiet for most of dinner, observing more than participating. But Ryan noticed that she accepted seconds, genuinely smiled when Mr. Johnson told an absurd story about finding first editions in unlikely places, and even politely agreed when Lily suggested she should visit the new chapters. After dinner, while some helped clean up and others migrated to the living room with dessert and coffee, Helen asked to speak with Mia privately. Ryan saw her body tense, but she agreed. They went out to the porch, closing the glass door behind them. Ryan stayed in the living room, pretending to pay attention to Robert's talk about expansion plans, but his eyes remained fixed on the two women on the porch. He couldn't hear what they were saying, but he observed their body language. Helen, rigid as always, Mia with her arms crossed defensively. 5 minutes, 10, 15... Finally, Helen extended her hand. Mia looked at her for a long moment, then shook it. It wasn't a hug. It wasn't a complete forgiveness. But it was a beginning. When they returned inside, both of their faces were carefully neutral. Ryan grabbed Mia as soon as she entered, whispering, "Are you okay?" "I'm okay," she replied, but didn't elaborate. Only later, When all the guests had left and they were in bed, a king-size bed that finally accommodated both of them comfortably, did Mia share about the conversation. "She apologized," Mia said, her head resting on Ryan's chest. "Not with those exact words, because I think Helen Mitchell doesn't know how to apologize directly. But she said she misjudged, that she underestimated what I built, that she may not fully understand my choices but can respect the dedication and impact. And then she said that any woman who truly makes you happy deserves at least a real chance." "A real chance," Ryan repeated. "Coming from her, that's practically a declaration of love." "I know. That's why I accepted her hand. We're not friends. We probably never will be, but we can coexist civilly. It's enough. More than enough." Ryan kissed the top of her head. "Thank you for trying, for not giving up on the possibility of a relationship with her just because it's hard. It matters, and you deserve to have your mother in your life, even if it's an imperfect version of her." They fell silent for a while, just breathing together, listening to the sounds of the city outside. Distant honks, music from some Christmas party, the constant noise that was the soundtrack of Chicago. "Ryan?" Mia broke the silence. "The document your mother gave, the shares, did you see the value?" "I did. 5 million. It's going to completely change the game for the cooperative." "That's a lot of money, a lot of power, a lot of responsibility." She stepped back to look at him. "What if we're not ready for this? What if we mess it all up?" "We're not going to mess it up. You won't let that happen." He caressed her face. "And I won't let you carry this alone. We're a team, remember? Whatever comes, success, failure, unexpected challenges, we face it together." "Together," she repeated like a mantra. "I like the sound of that." "Me too." They made love slowly that night, without hurry, just celebrating each other's presence, the life they were building piece by piece, the chosen family they had created, the challenges they had overcome, and those still to come. When they finally fell asleep, intertwined in the king-size bed in the apartment that was truly theirs, in a city pulsing with infinite possibilities, they both dreamed of the future. 6 months later. It was a cold, clear June afternoon when Ryan arrived at the new chapters carrying 2 cups of coffee. The bookstore was thriving beyond all expectations. With Helena's investment, they had expanded the educational project to serve 80 children, hired 2 more educators, and started developing a curriculum that other cooperatives could replicate. 3 new bookstores had joined the cooperative model, one in Lincoln Park, another in Uptown, and the third in Oak Park. The movement was growing, gaining media attention, attracting interest from social impact investors from all over the country. Mia was in a meeting with a journalist from the Chicago Tribune when he arrived, so Ryan waited in the reading corner, flipping through a new copy of poetry by Adelia Prado that they had received. "Sorry for the delay." Mia appeared 20 minutes later, looking tired but radiant. "The interview took longer than I expected." "No problem. I brought coffee." He offered her the still warm cup. They sat together on the armchair. Now they naturally shared it, something unthinkable at the beginning, when Mia carefully guarded her space. She rested her legs over his, taking off her shoes with a sigh of relief. "Long day?" "Meeting with suppliers in the morning. Interview now. Then I have to review the proposal for that grant in Oak Park. And there's also the children's book launch event at 7. She took a sip of the coffee. "Sometimes I miss when this was just a small bookstore where I knew every customer by name." "Missing the simple times?" "A little. I'm also proud of what we've built. It's a strange duality." She turned her head to look at him. "Do you feel that way sometimes? Missing when it was just you and your ambitions, without the complexities of relationships and shared responsibilities? Ryan thought honestly before answering. No, not at all. That life was empty, Mia. This one is full, complicated, yes, sometimes tiring, but full of real meaning. I would never trade this for the empty simplicity of before. Not even when I have PMS and get impossible? Not even when you have PMS and get impossible? Not even when my aunt calls 3 times in a row because she forgot the answer I gave the first time? Not even then. Not even when your mother sends messages suggesting subtle improvements to my wardrobe? Okay, maybe at that moment I question my life choices. He laughed when she hit him with a pillow. But seriously, Mia, this life, with you, with everything we've built, I wouldn't trade it for anything. Mia was quiet for a moment, then set her coffee aside and turned completely to face him. Marry me. Ryan blinked. What? Marry me. Not now, not tomorrow, but eventually, when you're ready, because I am ready. I'm ready to sign papers that say it's you and me against the world. I'm ready for hyphenated last names if you want. I'm ready for all the public declarations and legal commitments. I'm ready for everything. Ryan's heart was beating so hard that he was sure she could hear it. You are proposing to me? I am. And before you answer, know that it doesn't have to be traditional. It doesn't need a fancy ring or a big party. It doesn't even have to be a legal marriage if you'd prefer just a symbolic commitment. But it has to be real. It has to be you saying yes, that this is it, that I am this. Ryan abruptly stood up, making Mia almost fall off the armchair. Wait here, 5 minutes, don't leave. Ryan, what, 5 minutes? He was already running for the door. He returned 7 minutes later, out of breath, carrying a small navy blue velvet box. Mia was exactly where he had left her, but now surrounded by Mrs. Smith, Julia, and 2 other employees, all visibly curious. Can you give us some privacy? He asked politely, but firmly. Oh, this is definitely a marriage proposal, Mrs. Smith whispered too loudly, but obediently pushed the others away. Ryan knelt in front of the armchair where Mia was sitting, now visibly nervous. I was going to do this next month. I had an elaborate plan, a dinner at the restaurant where we first had empanadas, that ridiculously romantic soundtrack you pretend to hate but secretly love, a prepared speech with quotes from your favorite authors. Ryan, but you stole my thunder, as always, so I'm going to improvise. He opened the box, revealing a simple ring, silver, with a small aquamarine stone, the same color as Mia's eyes. This ring belonged to my paternal grandmother, the only person in my family who ever loved me unconditionally. She passed away when I was 12, but before she did, she told me to keep this.